You may have spotted some articles in the news this last week about the shortage of tomatoes in the supermarkets. I'd noticed that tomatoes, peppers, and indeed eggs this last week have been missing. And it reminded me that, you know, in another life, in another generation, you wouldn't have expected to see tomatoes on the shelf in February. We'd have all eaten seasonally. And anything that could be stored, dried, bottled, canned would be so to help get through that. And the way I shop now, which is basically to go into the supermarket and see what's on sale as yellow stickers, and that's what I get, is a way of life now. And I don't worry about it too much. I'm not, you know, like so many people who seem to think that everything has to be available. That, my God, there are no tomatoes, we're all going to curl up and die. Like it's, I mean, I blame the press for a lot of it. They really do go over the top if they want to fill column space. Just eat what's available. It's just food. I'm used to, you know, I might go into the supermarket every day for a week and not see anything that's cheap enough to buy. There will be other weeks where there's loads, and at the moment I have quite a few things in, and I'm going to I've got quite a lot of fresh veg in, so tomorrow I'm going to blanch it and put it in the freezer, because I have more than I can use at the moment to get me through until the end of the month, and I'm not going to let it go to waste. So I'll do a quick run through of that tomorrow to show you how to do that, because that's a really handy thing to have. You don't have to buy your veg ready frozen. If you see it cheaper fresh, you can freeze it yourself and it's still edible. I never have a problem with it. So yeah, eating seasonally, there's nothing wrong with it. It won't hurt you. People are just gone crazy. Today I'm going to blanch and freeze some of my fresh veg. I've done quite well over the last week, and I have a bit of a surplus now, and I've also got some room in the freezer, so this seems like a good time to batch freeze some of this for another time. I've got cauliflower, I've got sweet potatoes, I have a swede, I have 2 broccoli, which will, you know, last quite well. I've still got quite a lot in the fridge to get me through to the end of the month, so this is only a small part of it. So let's get on with chopping this veg and boiling up some water. Right, so my vegetables are now all chopped. It's a lovely selection there. We have the swede on the right. At the top we have the sweet potato. We have lots of cauliflower there. I think I'm probably going to make a cauliflower cheese, and lots of broccoli. For me, these things will freeze really well, and I have no problem reusing them after they've defrosted. I tend to use them in casseroles and in stir fries. I don't think that you'd want to defrost particularly, say, cauliflower, which retains a lot of water, and then have it on the side like almost like a meat and two veg kind of dinner, but then I wouldn't make a meal like that anyway. So now, having completed this, I now need to boil some water, so let's get that started. I'm going to get that up to boiling point and then put some of the veg in, and I will time it for 2 minutes. Okay, that's had 2 minutes up. Take it off the heat. Now I need to plunge this into cold water. Don't overrun your water. It's a precious commodity these days, and I'm just going to spoon this straight into the cold water. And the reason I'm doing it like this is because I also don't want to waste the boiled water, having to restart again from scratch. So that's still hot. That can go back on the heat. We'll get that boiling again, and then we can put the next veg in. We'll let this cool for a minute or two, and then we'll put it back in its tub. Oh, focus. There we go. And then when it's cooled down completely, if I go into plastic bags, and I keep the veg bags that come from the supermarket, and I have food bags that I've acquired over time. So now I'm going to repeat the process with all my other veg, and then we're going to bag it up. And so here is my veg, blanched, drained, cooled and bagged and ready for the freezer. These supplies are really important now. I'm seeing less and less in the shops of a price that I can afford or a price that I want to pay. And being able to freeze all this means that I'm never under pressure to buy when I don't want to spend full price, or that I don't see what I need on the shelves. We're having supply chain issues at the moment, largely caused by, I think it's energy costs, that suppliers abroad who grow veg and fruit out of season aren't able to, fuel their factories and their growing facilities. So there are gaps, and being able to, store fresh veg like this, I think it's better than frozen. But it's whatever works for you. These are all yellow sticker things, so these are all cheap in the first place. And these will last me months in the freezer, because there will still be food coming in on the shelves, and these are really my backups. So I'm now going to freeze this and get on with my day. Okay, this might be a controversial post for some, particularly for some women. I don't go to a hairdresser. Can you tell? So I last went to a proper walk-in salon hairdresser. I think it was probably in 2007, 2006. And that was when I had my fringe cut in, because before that my hair was all the same length. And I got fed up with it always being in my face, having to pull it up. My hair's really thick and really heavy, so it would give me headaches and it would pull the roots, and I absolutely hated it. So I went in and I had a bang fringe cut in, which has been great. But I was getting charged a lot of money for a quick wash and a trim, because it's a straight cut. It gets a straight cut across the bottom every so often, and I really need to do the back soon. And just a cut across the front. And my hair grows, I don't know if it grows any quicker than anyone else's, but it feels like it does. So I'd be constantly going in and paying 20, 30, 40 pounds for a cut, and it's just ridiculous. And as my life has changed, and as my circumstances have changed, going to a hairdresser is a huge luxury that I can no longer afford. So after that I started to have a home hairdresser, and sometimes I would go to their house and sometimes they come to mine, and it was so much cheaper. I was paying less than a tenner for a dry cut. And then I moved from where I was living at the time, and I moved up to the northwest, and I tried a couple of home hairdressers. Did I? I may have only tried one. I wasn't very impressed. I always found that I was having to, just slightly recut the fringe because it wasn't straight enough. And I was having to get so many appointments and still pay those tenors or £12 or whatever it was. So in the end, and certainly since 2016, I've been cutting my own hair. Because I am a clothing designer, I'm used to using scissors, cutting in straight lines, all that sort of thing. So it's not that scary, and I don't get upset about it anymore. I just get on with it. So what it means is that I can now just cut whenever I need to. Now I've been growing out some of the fringe because I didn't like how far back it was going. So I'm slowly growing these bits out. But it means that when my hair is up, I have these little side bits which I quite like. And this has all grown since last spring. So it grows at a reasonable length, and as I say, my hair's really thick. So I now just cut my fringe myself. I have a pair of hairdressing scissors, and so I just faff around, and I'm going to do this now so you can see what I do. There's not much involved really. I've got it down to about 10 minutes or so. But you have to just find all the fringe and deal with the bits. The other problem is that I am now of an age where I have a lot of grey hair, and I actually don't like it because it's kind of all over the place and a bit patchy. So every so often when I'm, well, I wouldn't say feeling a bit flush, but every so often I will go out and buy myself a box of hair dye. And I'll get rid of the dye. I think that's coming soon. Because now that spring's coming, I'm starting to feel a little bit more excited. I feel like I'm waking up, and I want to preen a little bit more, because once that weather changes and we go into winter, I really feel myself going to semi-hibernation. And I've changed my life to the point where I just go with it. I know people might say, oh, get yourself a light box, blah, blah, blah. They're expensive. My mum has a light box, and she's had one for years, and she absolutely swears by it. I don't feel like I suffer in that way, but I definitely slow down. And I think a lot of that is probably because of how I live. Because I do put up with the cold as much as possible at home. I don't use lots of lights. I don't have the heating on. So I do tend to wind down quite a bit. So I do a little trim as and when my fringe starts to annoy me, and you've probably noticed recently that it's looking quite bedraggled and out of control, and it doesn't help that it's grey. Ugh, I really have to dye this out soon. And I don't really care how it looks, really. It has to be reasonable, but I also find that it needs time to settle, so I'll do a trim and then a couple of days later it'll look different, because my hair just does whatever it damn well pleases. It doesn't like to style. So I just take a little bit of length off. Don't know what's going on with that top bit. It just does not want to play the game today. And it just makes it a little bit more manageable. It's not a really thick bang fringe. It doesn't sit really thick. at the front like that. It's a bit of an odd one. But anyway, it's out my face now. And that's basically all I do. I do need to lose some of the length. It's really long. And I looked on YouTube and found some hacks on how you can do the bottom. And it's to do with, you don't have to go really far back for you to see the bottom. But it's to do with, I'd have to get it really straight. And then you angle it. I can't remember which way around the angle needs to be. I think it's either that or it's the other way, so that when it goes to the back it either looks straight or it has that little bow to the middle of the back. Either way, I can't remember. I'll find out and I'll redo it. So that's basically hair. But look at all that grey, it's so depressing. Look at it, it's crazy. And I'm not going to pay a hairdresser to do it when I can buy a, God, look at that bit there. When I can get a £5 box and do it myself. These bits probably need a little trim as well. But nobody cares what I look like. I see far worse people walking around out there. A lot of the time, certainly in winter, I've had my woolly hat on and I've just tucked everything back anyway, so I just look like your average person walking around with a woolly hat on. But I do trim it up regularly. You can, I know when it's just got that little bit too long. So right now, you know, that'll do. Not a really tight bang cut. There's no point in doing that on my hair because it will look perfect in the hairdressers. And the minute I get home, it looks different because it won't stay. And I don't preen and I don't do like hairspray and straighteners every single day. I like the condition of my hair. When I was young, I used to have it all up in a ponytail and spray it and do all this to it, and pretty much ruined it for a while. I try not to wash it too often. I find that it dries it out. I do use a hair mask, but I don't wash even once a week because my hair just doesn't actually need it. And the more often you don't wash a lot, the better your hair gets, because every time you wash your hair with shampoo or whatever else it is you're using, you're stripping the natural oils out your hair, which would deal with it for you. So you need to just be a little bit careful about that. So I don't wash my hair too often. I know when it's got to the point where it does need a wash, and I let my hair tell me when it's ready for that. And I've got, you know, nice kind of normal condition hair really. But that's how I save money on hairdressers. You do what you have to do. It's the way it is. Technology on a budget is quite hard to negotiate. I kind of do everything on the fly. I don't have Wi-Fi, so I don't have broadband. I don't have any of that kind of technology. So when I started this YouTube channel, it was quite tricky to find software that would help me do videos. I thought to start with I would just do single point and shoot, but it's not very practical for the way that I'm putting things together. So I started off with a free app on my phone. I have an Android phone and it's called InShot. And it's pretty good. It's very simple. I don't want anything complicated. I don't know how to edit video, etc., etc. So that worked to start with, but it's really difficult to edit on a phone screen. And it started to get a bit frustrating. I also had to upgrade the memory on my phone. And in fact, I pulled out my old mobile phone, which I upgraded in 2019, but I kept the old phone for emergencies. And although I don't have it attached to the internet, because obviously my SIM card is in my regular phone, it's quite good as a camera. So I bought some new external memory, because one of the good things about the Samsung Galaxy phones, and certainly the ones that I've got, is that you can add external memory. So I bought a new memory card, 125GB, which I haven't decided which device to leave it in at the moment. I think I might end up just using my old phone from 2019 as my camera and stop recording on my actual phone entirely. Just seems to be easier that way. So I've done that. That memory cost me a tenner. That's all I've spent so far. And I've had to negotiate the software issue, because it's getting really difficult to edit just on my regular phone. And then of course I've got to get the recordings off my old phone onto my new phone to use the software, and it's just ridiculously stupid. So I've been researching for the last few weeks, trying to get some free software that works for me, that I can use on the laptop, so that I can just drop all the footage straight in, edit it there, and then upload to YouTube. And I've finally found something called PowerDirector 365, and they have different versions. So the free version, which is the version I'm now using, because obviously it doesn't cost me anything, is really sufficient for what I need. So I'm now able to drag and drop clips and edit them and add background music and do all sorts of things. Like InShot, PowerDirector does come with the watermark, but I don't mind having the watermark on there. I'm using their software for free, and the very least I can do for them is advertise that product in that way. So I have no problem with the watermarks being on it. If at any point this channel changes, I think that's highly unlikely, then I will buy the software and I will pay for it. But I've looked at the prices and I certainly can't afford it at the moment. So that's where I am now. I now have new software. I'm able to edit on my laptop and upload directly to YouTube the final videos. So that's making life a lot easier now. And that means I'm not putting extra resources into my phone and clogging up the memory and all that sort of thing. So there are ways around these things. You know, if you do your research, you can find the free software, you can find the free help that you need. But it does require more effort, and I know the whole idea of convenience is you just pay for something and you get it. But when you don't want to spend the money, or you can't spend the money, you need to put in the hours of research to find what you need. And it is out there, it's just finding the software. And I had to go through several different downloads of different video editors before I found one that I liked. And PowerDirector is the one that I like. It's simple. I'm not geeky, I'm not techie. I don't mind technology, I'm not afraid of it, but I don't want to go through big complicated processes to produce a video, which is basically a free thing I stick on the internet. You know, it's not like I'm earning hundreds of pounds from doing this, so I don't really want to spend any more effort than I absolutely have to. And frankly, I'm getting the same results at the moment. So things are going pretty well in that respect. I think that's working out really well. I've just streamlining, changing things and researching things, and you're learning all the time. The last few years have been a bit of a blur, haven't they? 2020 was a write-off. 2021 was partly a write-off and partly not a write-off. And 2022, I just didn't have the energy to deal with anything. I was just glad that things were as normal. Certainly from a COVID perspective, I mean, we've had so many other things go wrong, with prices going up because of Ukraine and inflation and all the ridiculous problems we've had with the UK government last year. And I want 2023 to be different, but I'm not too sure how that's going to happen. And so one of the reasons I became self-employed was because I was sick of the rat race. I had more money, but I had no time or energy to spend it, because I was constantly at work, because I was commuting all the time
too tired, and trying to also get my own business started. So all the hours I wasn't in a regular job, I was sewing and doing all sorts of other things to try and get the business off the ground. So now I have the work-life balance that I like. I work for myself, I work from home, no commute, not having to deal with offices and office politics and all the rubbish that comes with that, because I couldn't stand that anymore. Now I don't have the disposable income to go out and enjoy it. And it's a case of working out what you need in life. I've got most of it down to an art. It would be nice to earn more from what I'm doing, but I'm not. And there's all sorts of economic reasons and personal reasons why that is the case. I've cultivated a few side hustles to tip the balance on that, so things are easier, but they obviously take up time. And I don't know, I think I don't want to go out and party. I don't want to go on big expensive holidays, but I would love to go out and explore and travel. I would love to go on little road trips around the country, and, you know, just get off the beaten track. And I think that's the one thing that's missing for me at the moment, is too much time spent at home, because I don't want to spend the money on fuel, and I just need to get the balance right on that one. So that's the thing I need to think about this year. Last year, I think it was last year, I got really interested in van life and car camping. I follow some van lifer YouTube channels, and in fact last year I did my first car camp. Now I have a very small 3-door hatchback, so I did manage to do one night in my car. Wasn't the best night I've ever spent, and that was for more reasons than because the car was so small for sleeping in. But I want to do it again this year, because although the overnight was tricky, I quite enjoyed the experience, and it meant I could drive further in one day rather than having to do everything in one trip and come back home at night. So I did enjoy that. So I want to do one of those this year, and I might do it in May. So I need to... I've already planned where I want to go and what I want to do. I'm really into genealogy, so I don't just go out and wander. I want to go to places that mean something to me. So I'd like to go to places that are related to genealogy that I've researched in my family tree. I'm really interested in my Scottish roots. My Scottish family lived on the borders, so it's not too far to go, and I've done lots of research on that. I have been up there once in 2019. I did an overnight and did lots of research up on the borders and in Cumbria, because we had lots of toing and froing between the borders of Scotland and down into what was then known as Cumberland. So that was really interesting. I really enjoyed that, and I've done lots of research since then, and I found out more about the borders towns where we came from, and more about the actual places where we lived and what we were doing. So that's definitely a trip I need to do this year, and I'm going to do that as an overnight. I think I'm going to do it as an overnight car camping trip. I need to work out where I'm going to pop the car for a night, which is relatively easy. I mean, if you're not being intrusive and you're just parking up, you can pretty much plot yourself up anywhere as long as you're careful about it. So I do already have most of my route planned and the places I want to go and see, so I just need to strategize that. So I think that's going to be my May plan, which is kind of my equivalent of a holiday, really. But it's still fun, you know. It's only overnight, but it's still fun, and it requires some organisation, and it's not going to break the bank either. A couple of tanks of petrol, and that's pretty much it. In June I will be house sitting for my parents who are going on holiday, and I always go down and house sit and look after the house for them. So that means I get a couple of weeks somewhere nicer, somewhere quieter, with a nice garden. So I kind of treat that as a holiday. You know, a change is as good as a rest. And it's nice to get a break from just being up here, because the town where I live is a bit naff, to say the least. So it's nice to have a break from that, and I do get those breaks every quarter to get away from that. But it's also nice to be down there and for no one else to be there, because I like living alone. I'm not very good at living with people for a long time, and although it's great to be down there, we live very different lifestyles, so I find quite a lot of that quite at odds with the way I live, and quite eye-opening at times, to be honest with you. So that'll be a nice break as well. So there are things to look forward to that aren't just, you know, a change in weather, a change in pace. But I still need to think more about the long term, because I can't just keep going on just working all the time and working from home and minimising everything because of income. There have to be better ways to do things. And I'm sure there are people out there that have nailed it, and that's what I love about the YouTube channels and a lot of the people that I follow, is that they have all the ideas and they're doing the things that I would like to do. You know, if I was more, if I did a different kind of job, if I had more finance, I think van life would be a really great way to go, and I'd love to do that. But it's not practical, certainly not at the moment. The logistics just wouldn't work. Certainly not for now. But those are all things to think about, you know. There are always possibilities, and you never know what's going to change in life. You know, you can't predict everything. So, things to think about. So 2023 needs some changes. I've made a few changes already, little minor ones, but I want to ramp it up a bit, because I've been using the pandemic and the economy and other similar things as an excuse for too long now. That 2022 was a bit of an excuse, but also things were tough, you know. The energy price rises, fuel price rises really took a hit on people's budgets, and I think it's better to be cautious and look after your interests. So I wanted to be careful financially. I don't think this year is going to be as volatile, and I'm making some inroads into that. But yeah, I don't want to be rash. I don't want to fling money at things and do things that that are going to cause problems. But equally, I can't just sit around like I was last year, like I am now. So there we are. That's another one of my short ramble. Just thinking sessions. I'm putting together a whole section of these, and I don't know how they're going to work. I don't know whether to put one in each other video and break them up, or just stick them all together. I don't know how interesting these are. I also want to work on my delivery, because I think I have a really flat, boring accent. But I think maybe that's just a practice thing, that as I get used to doing this channel more and finding different ways of doing things, that I'll become hopefully a bit more interesting. It's hard when you start out, you know. I'm still very, very new to this, and I'm learning new things all the time, and I know I am incrementally getting better at it. But practice makes perfect, and it's all a learning curve, and that was one of my little challenges for this year, and so far it's still working out really well. So I can't complain about that, can I?